In this episode, I interviewed Britta and discussed her experience with cultivating people into a Dynamics 365 career. This is the Dynamics 365 show focusing on the ingredients of a successful Dynamics 365 practice. Your host is Business Solution MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 guy. I love engaging with the community, so send me a message on Twitter or LinkedIn by searching for NZ365 guy. I'd love to have a chat. To review the show notes of this episode, please go to nz365guy.com/23. I'd like to thank the generous contribution from our sponsor, Ingenious. Ingenious Connector Enterprise integrates your telephone system into Microsoft Dynamics 365 and CRM. For increased phone agent productivity, the solution equips service desks and contact centers with features like screen pop, click to dial, automated call logging, and call reports for a comprehensive view of interactions. Enable efficient customer service and intelligent decision making with Ingenious. Hi everyone, I'm here with Britta Rekstad, and in this episode we're going to be focusing on enabling careers in Dynamics Community. Britta is focused on Microsoft partners and customer organizations to provide training, documentation, and oversight on system design. She was awarded the Microsoft MVP Award in 2015, 2016, and 2017, and fingers crossed she'll be awarded it again next week for her contribution to the Dynamics CRM community. As an avid supporter of the CRM User Group, she carries out her passion of empowering system administrators, building consultants, and university students through presenting, mentoring, and guiding programs and events. Britta, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
So Britta, before we get underway in introductions to yourself, I love your title on your LinkedIn profile, Microsoft MVP, freelancer, CRM consultant, and MacGyver CRM, which I think is a call out to your online handle. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. It was actually a Convergence ad lib back in the day, and it just stuck.
Wow. Excellent. And you've got your own podcast as well on CRM audio, correct?
Yes, I do. I have a podcast called Implement This with Matthew C. Anderson. So we focus on the system admin and newer consultant audience, giving them really practical insight into how senior consultants approach a problem. So how we approach security or going mobile or something like that.
Yeah, it's a great show. Good half-hour segment with a lot of meat, if you like, meat and potatoes, as I'd say. There's plenty to glean from your podcasts and the ones I've listened to.
Thank you.
Excellent. So why don't you go ahead and just tell us a bit about your background, and particularly like how did you end up in Dynamics? It's quite unique, and I'd like to understand it a bit more about how you took that journey from whatever you were doing into the Dynamics community and your experiences along the way.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to tell you about it. I am really just a receptionist who got very lucky. There were no mile markers in the future as a child that I would end up in anything to do with computers. Honestly, my family is still kind of shocked. I'm not good at math. I do not have a science background, and I'm dyslexic. So really anything technical seemed like that was far out of reach for me. And I just through a great stroke of luck on a office job I found on Craigslist, ended up helping to implement a CRM system. And then from there, left that job for an opportunity to help with a Dynamics project. And I was just supposed to come in. My job was to complain to the partner. It was a 3-month contract, and they said the users aren't happy, but we don't know why. So interview the users, figure out what they don't like, and then complain to the partner for us. And I ended up building about 95% of that system myself and staying on for several years, and then made the jump from doing that to freelancing full time. So I've actually never been on staff at a partner. I've subcontracted for many partners, but I didn't do that traditional consultant path. I went from customer to solo.
Okay, so you're a receptionist, if I got this right. You saw a job on Craigslist, and then you transitioned. But was it a Dynamics role that you were going for on Craigslist? What made you decide to give it a crack?
No, actually, I was a receptionist, but I didn't have anybody to implement this other CRM system, which wasn't Dynamics. And so it just kind of fell in my lap because no one else wanted it. So while I had this, minimum wage office job, I started implementing CRM systems, and then through a friend heard about this, essentially an internship opportunity to complain to the partner that I can do that. Yeah. I like to talk. So no, it wasn't a Dynamics position I interviewed for. I wouldn't have been hired for that. And that's part of my passion in mentoring, is that I was not a safe bet. I don't think any of the programs that exist today at Partners would have ever bet on me because there was no indication that I would have been good at it by the measuring sticks that we use. And I think that's where we're missing a lot of talent. And we have such a big gap in the talent in the roles we can fill because we're not looking out of the box for other people out there.
So where do you see that, if you like, the programs that are out there are kind of missing the mark? Are they setting, if you like, the bar too high? You know, particularly let's look at the idea of coming in on an internship to start with at a company specifically focused in Dynamics. What are your thoughts?
From the programs that I've seen, I think they're looking for a clear leaning to already having some either a scientific background or maybe a computer engineering background. I think if you do write code, there are definitely paths to transition in. And sometimes if you're coming directly out of university, there are some opportunities there. But it's where I see a huge gap is looking at someone who has strong communication skills. They've been on projects. They know how to answer emails and how to do a lot of the day-to-day life being a good employee, but they don't have that technical leaning. And where I find people have the most potential, if I find someone who has great personality and they're a good problem solver, they're the kind of person, and this is why I have a soft spot for receptionists because I was one. If you find those people who everything in the office runs better the day they're in the office. Just for some reason, everything's a little more organized. Before you know it, they've been working there 2 months and all of a sudden there's color-coded Post-it notes and things just seem to work better. Those people have great potential in Dynamics, but they're never going to show up as this, rock star potential the way that a current university student who's learning to write code would.
Yeah, it's interesting because, worldwide there's a massive shortage of expertise in the Dynamics space. Everyone's always looking for more resources. Mm-hmm. And yet you've highlighted there is that, if you like, you're saying because the current programs are not really are not focused on personality or attitude, they're going more for these other skills. They're potentially missing out on a whole pool of really talented people with good communication skills, good attitude, organized, that type of thing. And really the skills, as you and I both know, can be trained and
Absolutely.
Really, don't need to be looked for up front, do they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the actual technical skill is so learnable. And that's what I found in mentoring is that I can teach it. I can teach just about anybody how to write a workflow. I'm not worried I can't teach them how to write a workflow. I am worried whether I can trust them in front of a client. Do I trust them to send their own emails? Do I feel like if I put them in a meeting, are they going to be a humble listener and really try to get to the root of the problem and understand the pain points the customer has? Are they going to run in with their ego and run around with scissors the whole time? I care more about that. I can teach them how to put fields on a form. That's not that hard. And that's not the hard part of the job anyway. And the people who have the most potential and are going to grow into these very valuable resources and run projects and do great things in the community, that's a personality thing. That's not a technical skill thing. Technical skill can be taught. The other thing that I find is that because the product changes so early and so often, I can't teach someone every technical skill they need to have. And there isn't a consultant alive who has every technical skill. I don't have every possible technical skill in the product, and that's okay. You learn it as you need it. And so it's more about having the right approach. So I find with my students, if I can teach them what should be possible, and I can teach them how to go find the answer when they need it, that's a lot of the battle. And so when the focus is on technical skills, or my pet peeve actually with the partner community is that there's this idea that number of years in the field equates to experience. And I think that's so broken because as a freelancer, as a gun for hire, I get to see the inside of a lot of partners. And I've worked with consultants who have technically more years of experience in the field than I do that I can't trust farther than I can throw them. And I've worked with really, really great technically junior resources that I know they're going to go find their way through that problem. If I throw something at them, I know that they're going to come back with an answer. And so what really frustrates me is that as I'm mentoring people and I'm trying to help them get employed, there's this perception of, well, we really want someone with 2 years of experience. Who do you have with 2 years of experience? And I say, great, awesome, that's fine. What would someone have learned in those 2 years that would make them valuable to you? And I have never once, Mark, found anyone who can answer that question.
Yeah, exactly. So it's almost like there's a list of questions that people should ask in job interviews and things that are kind of like, you must ask these questions, but they're really irrelevant, if you like, to our industry and what we're doing, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's interesting because one of the things you said there was talking about being a humble listener, and man, that just evoked images of me of meetings that I've been in, and the arrogance that sometimes comes through from consultants in those customer facing meetings. And I'd say even I've been guilty of myself, and I tell you that word humble listener is such a, if we could put that as a check mark, I think you're right. You're on the right path to looking, for the right type of skills. And it raises a question. I'd be interested in getting some feedback from the audience on this around job interviews. What wrong questions have been asked in your job interviews that really have no relevance, and no one's asking that question. So tell me, what's been a highlight so far in your career to date and the journey you've been on?
It's a great question. I think I really have two so far, and they actually both happened this year. One was I got the opportunity, I was invited by James Phillips to speak at an all hands meeting in January. And I got to speak to the business applications group of a team there out at Microsoft about what we're doing with talent and how we're growing people in the industry and the kind of some of the inspiring stories. So that was really, really rewarding to get to do that. And then MVP Summit this last year was extra special for me. It was my third year, and I feel like I finally found my voice. And that took me 3 years there to find. I have some insecurity as someone who hasn't worked in enterprise. I haven't worked at one of the big partners. I don't have that expertise. I always have kind of quieted myself at MVP Summit. And I have come to find that we still need that voice for small to mid-sized customers, and people outside of that enterprise world have a very big place in our ecosystem. And so that was just really fun to get to finally go, oh, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. And it was so good. It was so good. I loved how you engaged, right across the week we were there. It was brilliant.
Thank you.
So, I mean, this podcast has come out of that and some of the discussions that we've had. So let's drill in a bit to this idea of reskilling and changing career. So I know in my experience is that there's a lot of, people that have even been in professional roles in the past. They've started a family, they might have a young family, and they've got no plans, if you like, of returning to their former roles, jobs, etc. And they're looking for what's next, and they might not have even been in IT in any way, and specifically not in our field with Microsoft Business applications. What are you coming across people in that space? What are you seeing? Can you give a bit of idea about the type of people you're working with at the moment that are getting into the Dynamics space that you're coaching, mentoring, that type of thing?
Absolutely. So I think there is just a treasure trove of those people. And that's what I am so inspired by and so excited by, is that there are so many wonderful people that we really, really need to have. We need their skills. Really, really common for women to have taken some time out to raise children. Or the thing I find actually most commonly is that a lot of women end up in the role that life gave them. It was what worked, if they were a military spouse and they moved every 2 years. It's hard to build a career when you're moving every 2 years. Or they had a child with special needs, and so they had to be available to take them to doctor's appointments. Or there was some other piece. Also finding people with physical disabilities where they're super smart, great with people. A remote job is great for them, but just some of the demands of an office job in person just don't work for their health needs. And so what I find all the time, everyone, if you really think about it, anyone knows somebody who is way smarter than the job they have. And I know that was me when I was in that place, and I find these people everywhere. And now that I have enough people in my life who've been watching my program, I get emails all the time. I got 3 this week, actually. Funny enough, my most recent recruiting source, I've started online dating, and I have had more success picking up students than I have second dates.
Wow.
But I find a lot of people who go, oh, that's so cool. My niece, would be great for that. Or guys deciding they want to be in the program, which is super funny.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so you find them everywhere. Literally everywhere. But yeah, it's, I think there's a great wealth of opportunity there. The thing that's interesting though, is that when you're trying to find humble listeners, they have some natural things preventing them from being really good at the way we recruit people today. So if someone is, and I find this especially with women, the kind of women I want someone who can go in and compassionately listen to a client, listen first, understand the issue, and then find a practical way to solve it. And I find that those students, for the most part, they have a really hard time with bugs. I've had a lot of students, one of my best students ever, her IQ had to be through the roof, just brilliant. Nearly dropped out the first week I had her. She sent me this email out of the blue and it said, "Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, but it's clear I'm not smart enough to be in your program, so I'm going to drop out." And I called her right away and I said, "What is going on?" And she said, "Well, I've been trying all weekend to set up the trial environment you asked me to set up, and I just can't do it." And so I did a screen share with her, and she had a error message that not only have I never seen that error message, I've never seen that font in an error message. I mean, it was so bizarre. And that I realized in that moment, the difference between she and I is that I can look at a bug like that and go, "Ha, that's funny," send a picture to a friend and then move on with my day. She spent her entire weekend beating herself up, believing that she was too stupid to do this job. And so if we're going to find people who are humble and compassionate and have the right spirit for it, we have to come alongside intentionally and teach them how to spot a bug, how to know when the client is asking for something unreasonable and that's not their fault. They just have to learn how to redirect or call in a senior resource. And so if we only want people who can courageously believe that they can already do this and have enough ego to just show off in an interview and land the job they're not really ready for yet, we're going to miss the great people we really, really need because we're looking for them to just have all this bravery and ego and almost narcissism and just show up unprepared. And that, I think we're looking in the wrong places for them.
Yeah. Wow, man, that's impacting. It's interesting you said about women not choosing their role and kind of ending up where they end up in a lot of scenarios. And I've just finished reading a book by Shonda Rhimes, who wrote a book called The Year of Yes. And just a phenomenal, easy read. You know, she's the creator of Grey's Anatomy, as well as a Serial and a whole bunch of other shows. Just a phenomenal lady. And in it, she talks about, you know, battling with this type of thing of being, you know, designated a role in life that you must fit into. And she's, you know, on a crusade and has been for some time, really, in addressing it. And one of the things, you know, she chose to do is not get married. And she chose it as a choice. She decided that wasn't for her and it wasn't her thing. And just the reaction she got from people. And it's interesting. I see parallels with what you're talking about here is women ending up in roles that, you know, are not really, if they had the choice of choosing whatever they want to do, they perhaps wouldn't have chosen what they're doing. And I think that if we can uncover opportunities and make a future way available, I think that'd be really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So tell me a bit more about how you're picking up or how these people are coming to you and finding out about your program.
Well, right now it's all word of mouth. I'm working on formalizing things that actually have a little more of a pipeline and a little more of a process. But what's really interesting, I'm both trying to scale down the attrition rate a little bit, but not too much, as I will take anybody, literally anybody. And part of the liability of doing things that way is that your attrition rate's really high because you take people who shouldn't have been there in the first place. And the reason that I do that is that almost all of the breakout successes are not people you could have bet on. I have not found what it is that we're looking for. And so I leave it wide open. So part of the issue with that is that I start with a really big class and then several people drop out in the first 3 weeks. And then we get down to a much, much smaller group. And so that looks a little funny, but I think to cast a really wide net and bring in a lot of people you'd miss otherwise, I think you kind of have to do that.
Yeah. So hang on a second. You're doing these as in physically in a classroom with these people. Is that right?
Nope. It's actually remote.
Fantastic.
I do it all over GoToMeeting, and that works well. And I'm working on bringing in more video and trying to, I found it's not the best use of anyone's time to have me lecture live because there's such an opportunity for video and even using community resources for that. So what I try to do is have our time together be either discussion or problem solving or whiteboarding or, things like that. And then have them go learn technical skill on their own time and then show back up to class.
Okay, so just run me through your run sheet of your first day, as in if you take a new intake, kind of what are you doing to set the scene? Because I assume a lot of people are making their decision on that first session, whether they're staying or going.
Yes. So the very first day, we lay a lot of ground rules and also just talk about what is the opportunity in Dynamics. Almost everyone who comes in has never heard of it before. And so they don't appreciate what the potential roles are in the dynamic space, and then also what it takes to get there. So we talk about that. And then I found I've got to give them a little bit of time to actually just use the product. I made that mistake early on where I would take students and I get them into customizing right away. And I learned that if you've never been a user, you don't really appreciate a lot of the nuance of creating a good user experience. So the first little bit is a mix of learning Excel skills, because I want to push them technically, and then having them actually perform tasks as a super user. So we create work for them to do. So they're tracking leads and that kind of thing. And then also a lot of reading. I think it's really important. There's so many great business books out there, and a lot of people who are reskilling, they haven't read those yet. And so it's important to build up all those soft skills that I think you only get through those great authors.
At the end, I'm going to ask you a bit more about the books you recommend, but just here for this section we're talking about, what type of books would you recommend to somebody at this point?
I think the first book anyone has to read, whether you are on the customer side or the partner side, is Getting Naked by Patrick Lencioni. It's a fantastic author. And that book, what I love for someone who's reskilling especially, is that it takes the vulnerability of not having the answer and it shows you how to use that to your advantage, how to be vulnerable with the client, how to be open, how to be honest. And there's just so many great practical tips in there. And I found for my students, it helps pivot their mindset of being the lowest on the totem pole to realizing that they have a fresh perspective and that's valuable. And there's so much they can already do. Even just the power of not knowing the answer, that can be really valuable, actually. There's a humility in that if you do it right.
Any others?
See, also have them read The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. I haven't pushed them past more books yet. I have a long list I love to read. So yeah, I've got a lot of other ones. There's so many great leadership books too, and that kind of thing. Kind of depends on the audience, I guess, who I'm recommending it to.
Mm-hmm. So what are the options for people out there that have kind of found themselves in this position? If let's say they're listening to this or a friend's going to refer them to this, can they get in touch? As in, do you have a web page set up, or how do they kind of engage with you? Is it just email, or what's the story there?
Great question. So today it's email. They can email me, britta@MacGyverCRM.com. Maybe we can throw that in the show notes so it's easier for people. Or they can go to my website, which is MacGyverCRM.com. We actually don't have a landing page for the program yet. And part of that is I am terrible at naming things. So for about 5 years, it's been lovingly referred to as that thing that Britta does on Tuesday nights. Mm-hmm. So we're working on getting a better name than that. And then, social media presence and such will follow. So for right now, if there's no send me an email. We are recruiting for future classes right now. Don't have a date quite yet, but have a healthy waiting list. They're welcome to join and give them a little more information.
Excellent. And it's all remote, right? It's remote, so
right.
They don't have to be in your state where you're located, that type of thing.
Absolutely. All remote. And we're working on the dream is to really open it up internationally. There's no reason why it has to be focused on North America, especially with being remote. It's just, we haven't quite expanded that far yet, but one of the great benefits of the MVP program is that we have experts all over the world. So that's my dream is to see it not just be focused in North America, but that's where at least time zone wise has been up to this point.
Yeah. So give me the common excuses you hear from people of why not to get involved in your program.
Common excuses. So why they would drop out or why they wouldn't do it in the first place?
No, a couple of things. So why would they drop out? Why would they, after hearing it, think it's not right for them, where you may think that it is right, but what's the common, what are you commonly hearing?
Oh, okay. The number one reason I believe people drop out is that what it truly is it's a year of night school. It's like going back to community college or something else. And I get a lot of people who, if they've just lost their job or they have some immediate need and they want to figure out what they can do in the next 3 weekends to totally change their life. And it's not that kind of thing. You need to go back to school. It takes some time to invest and to grow. And so that misperception of how much work it's going to be and how long it's going to take, that I think is the biggest issue I run into. Sadly, the other one that I run into is lack of a good laptop. I have that all the time where someone can't be in my class. They'll ask, can I take your whole class from an iPad? I say, no, I really need you to have a Windows PC. And so that is short of just people having the amount of time to commit. My second biggest barrier to entry is having access to an even semi-modern Windows PC.
Yeah. Wow. Internet connection speeds?
No, people tend to have internet at home, but they do things off of their phone, or maybe they have a tablet. But a lot of people, they don't have, and a lot of people that I'm working with, they are lower income families, or, they might have a Apple or a Mac that they bought in college 10 years ago, but that's not really a viable machine now. And that sadly is the biggest issue we run into.
Wow. So how do you encourage people, like from a point of taking that step and starting to develop a new career? What type of encouragement do you give them? Do you have success stories that you're already talking about with them? Yeah.
So I've been really lucky that my students, they almost always come back and end up working as mentors in the program. And that's been such a gift. So then they're there and they'll chime in class. Don't worry. The first time I did solutions, I was totally overwhelmed and I didn't know what I was doing. And I promise it gets better. And so having them come alongside and someone even seeing this person I respect a year ago, they were waiting tables and now they've got this great job and they're really happy and they learned it too and it's going to be fine. That actually helps a lot because that's someone they can relate to. And that's a big part of why I don't just want to send people a bunch of homework and send them off into the wilderness. I want to have these regularly scheduled classes because we get to talk about it. And I think where people really find hope is where they get to start solving a problem. And so as much as possible, I want those quick wins. I want someone to, it's kind of like the excitement. It's the whole hello world concept where, you do something and it works and you get really excited and that feeds on itself. And the more wins they have, the more excited they get. And I also really push them to think back on the companies they've worked at or the problems they've solved and then apply a flow to something that used to drive you nuts at your last job, or how, a simple Excel formula could have saved you hours, but you didn't know what it was. And those things, that is infectious. And when people catch that, then they're good. Then they stick around. They get over the confidence piece and they start really winning. Then they're in for good.
Wow, that's good. That's good. So what resources are available out there for people that are wanting to start from the bare bones and develop, a new skill, a new job opportunities, a new career, if you like? What resources are available to them? I'm not talking about the stuff that's for consultants, that have been doing this for ages. I'm talking about the newcomers.
Great question. So if you're lucky enough to get to go work for a customer, that is your best way in. So those jobs are also harder to find because everyone wants someone with some experience. But the best possible thing for someone who wants to start over would be to find a customer to work at and join the user group and get really, really, really involved in the user group. Watch webinars, ask questions, get on the forums, go to Summit, do all of those things. That's not an option for everybody. And clearly that includes getting hired into a job that you don't yet have the skills for. So it's a little tricky to do, but that's, I think, the luckiest people get to go that path. We're working on figuring out how to scale programs like mine a lot bigger so that there are actual opportunities someone can just, apply for and go submit themselves for. So that's another way around it. There's also great resources on edX. There's some great classes, things like App in a Day. There's a great curriculum for App in a Day for learning Power Apps and Flow and Power BI and skills like that. And honestly, for most people in the job you already have, if you're working in any kind of an office job, you might be able to apply Power BI to the job you already have. You might be able to apply a Flow or something else and learn skills where you are. And that can be really valuable too. What you're trying to show is your ability to find the answer and solve a problem. So I don't get hired because I have all the answers. I get hired because I have a long track record of showing that I know how to solve problems. I can take something I've never seen before and get to the end of it. And so if someone can rack up kind of almost this portfolio of ways that they have proven themselves and the ability to find the answer, that's going to be their best path in, I think.
Excellent. So what resources are needed? What do you see as the community could get behind and develop some resources that you would find very beneficial? Might not just be the community, people might do it commercially as well. What's needed?
First projects are huge. We need to get people out there actually seeing projects in the wild. So I would love to see more internships and opportunities to do things. I think a lot of the work that, at least here in the States, gets offshored. building fields, a lot of the grunt work that, senior consultants don't want to do. That's a great opportunity for someone who's learning. And so even if it's just data cleanup or things like that, that's honestly, the hardest thing is getting the first project. Once you've been on something, it's easier to go from there. Other resources are just kind of on my wish list. I wish I had older systems. I have very, very current environments that my students can learn in, but I don't have a 2011 system they can go see. And the likelihood they're going to run into that in the field is really high still. And so I want someone to be able to try to build a business rule in 2015 versus today and feel the difference. And I don't have that. The other thing I wish we could do as a community is donate our bugs. Because I think in solving bugs, or even seeing where it's not really a bug, it's scope creep, or it's a user training issue or whatever, that is the best possible exposure for someone who's new. And that's really hard on a trainer to just go create in a fresh, clean trial environment. And so if we could find a way as a community to donate our bugs, donate our problems, tell us your war stories, tell us about your worst project ever and why it was the executive's fault. Those are so valuable to someone who's new.
Yeah, excellent. This is great stuff. So, for example, you talked about the environments here, 2011, CRM 4, 2013, 15, etc. Have you ever thought of spinning up an Azure instances of those versions on an IaaS environment?
I have. I actually wasn't able to get the build files. So I'd love to talk to anyone who can help me find those. I even asked Pervin for them, and he said they're really hard to get. So
I'm pretty sure I've still got the build files for everything.
Okay, well, I'd love to get those from you.
Yeah, because I've built. It's how I learned was to build VMs myself and break them. And I would just build them. Before there was Azure, I would do it on my laptop, and it's a great way to learn. And of course, you could run those other scenarios. But they will definitely, if I don't have them, and I think I do, but I'd have to go and check. I might not, because they're so big and took up storage before we had heaps of storage. I might have got rid of them thinking they were always easy accessible, but let's see if we can find them.
That would be great.
So let's talk about Microsoft partners and what opportunity are they leaving on the table? What do they need to change? What needs to be done differently to really tap in and leverage this potential very large talent pool?
Well, I think first we need to have a better understanding of what talent at different levels should look like. And that doesn't just benefit bringing in new people. It actually benefits the team you already have. If you understand what someone at that pay grade or that level of experience should be able to do and what they need to learn to grow into an even more valuable resource, that helps everybody. And so I think if we can come together and have a better understanding of what does it actually mean to be, what is, and I don't want to get into years, but what is a 2-year consultant actually, what's that person be able to do? What does an admin truly do? And when does an admin really become a customizer or really a consultant who's in-house? Because that's a huge misconception. So I think we need to come around behind that. There needs to be an understanding. I know everyone wants to hire talent that's billable tomorrow and is just ready. And honestly, we've been doing this too long for too many years. We know the talent pool doesn't exist. We know we have to invest. And so we need to come together and say, okay, how do we create that talent? And the biggest risk to that right now is poaching. It's really high. And that's a problem. I was shocked when I got my first job. And remember, my role was only to complain to the partner. I wasn't even a consultant or an admin back then. And I think I'd updated my LinkedIn for a little over a week when I started getting recruiters circling and offering me a lot more money than I was making. And I didn't know anything. And I would not have been a valuable resource, but I could spell Dynamics. And so they wanted me. And that's not great for the talent either, because then they get thrown into roles they're not ready for. And then they crash and burn, and then they end up getting fired, and that's not good. And so what I would love to see is a group of partners coming together and saying, we know for the survivability of the future, we need to do this. We need to create more talent. We need to, stop the turf war, because there just isn't enough talent in there to keep stealing each other's people. We just need more.
Yeah. Man, you're so right. I've seen this happen a lot in the industry. How about remote working? Do you see that as a difficulty for some customers to have, partners to have remote workers? And, it might not be that they're a time zone away different, just they've got people that can't, if you like, go to an office because of, let's say, family commitments, so let's say they could do a 6-hour day, they've got other responsibilities. Are you seeing partners just not interested in those type of folks and working remotely?
That's interesting. I think it comes down to a level of experience, and there's probably a trust component there. I work almost exclusively remotely, and I don't have any problem finding work that way, but I also have experience behind me, and so there's a trust there. And I think it's becoming so common to send off the work to some other group to do for us that I think we're actually more comfortable with remote than we give it credit for. Part of that is understanding if you need to structure it well enough that I think it's also a management thing. If you know what it is that resource is supposed to be doing and you know how you'll know if they did it or not, sometimes there's this belief that, well, I'm a better manager if my people are in cubes and they're in the same building I'm in. And that's not really, if your management is entirely dependent on someone being in the same building as you, but you never talking to them, I don't know that is actually the employee's fault. And I think there is a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of people, I have students with physical disabilities where they could work a solid 40 hours a week, really, really valuable. And honestly, all their clients are remote anyway, but just being physically present in the office more than one day a week, it just is a no-go for them. So I think we're leaving a lot of talent by the wayside that we really need because we're not talking in a tactical sense. What do we need to do to make it possible for someone to work from home? What does that role look like? How do we build trust?
Yeah. Well, partners that are listening, and those of you that are representing those type of organizations, it'd be great to hear from you if your organization or who we should speak to in your organization that could perhaps assist and be open to a discussion about how a program like this could potentially be put in place where, you started taking some of these talented people out that, kind of don't fit the cookie cutter mold that your history might be used to. We'd love to hear from you. So moving on, I'd like to talk to you about mentoring. And I don't know if you classify what you're doing here as mentoring. I see it as probably a lot more than that. But tell me about, have you been mentored at any part of the, through your career, and what was that experience like?
I'm very lucky. I've had some really amazing mentors, and I've had people who were willing to call themselves mentors, which I think some people, they wait there like a baby bird in a nest looking to be fed, and then they get very hurt that no one has actively mentored them. And so I actually would like to talk about both things. First, to answer your first question, I have some really great mentors. One I'm so grateful for is Julie Ack, who I know you know is just amazing. And she has mentored me in so many ways, but the one that I don't know how I'd live without is someone she's taught me how to be a really good unicorn. I have a really unique skill set that I brought to the table when I joined Dynamics, and she's been able to help me see the unique value of that instead of saying, well, gosh, I'm not a developer, so what am I good for? Looking at it and saying, no, you're a strong writer and you like to communicate and you think in these ways, and here's how you apply that. And so that's been really valuable. And then I have another mentor, Aaron Duke, who's an enterprise project manager. And he was the first person to say, I would like to mentor you, and here's what mentoring means to me. And he has a very structured way of mentoring me that I really appreciate a lot. And so a lot of what I've learned along the way in leadership and management has come from him. And something that he's so good at is he can look at something. Sometimes I feel like I'll just get lost. You do everything you know how to do and you just hit a wall. And he's really good at saying, okay, you're almost there. Look to the left. See that? Okay, now go there. It's just give me the next little piece. And he's kept me unstuck. I think on the informal mentoring, it's really important to just capitalize on the little minutes you get with people. Who I would consider to be my earliest mentor, although I don't know that he would consider this, is actually Richard Knudsen. He's a fantastic MVP, former MVP. And I've probably only met Richard 3 times, I think. But every time I did, I made an excuse. Hey, can I take you to coffee? Hey, can I just talk to you? I sat next to him on a bus once and picked his brain. And I tried to use well the 5 or 10 minutes I'd get with him in a hallway. And he had such an impact on my career. And I really believe he's the one who set me on the path to become an MVP. But I don't know that he would ever consider himself my mentor or that we had any kind of formal mentoring relationship. I just made really, really good use of the minutes I got of him and made the best of it.
That's so interesting. It's so interesting. So how do you be a good mentor?
Don't build a restaurant.
What do you mean?
I mean, don't just feed them the answer.
Gotcha.
There's a temptation with mentoring because there's a little bit of ego that comes in. We have the answer. We're so great at what we do. And that's the thing. It's really fun when someone brings you problems that you can solve without even thinking about it. Those are really fun days. But that's not the point of mentoring. And so if you're trying to help someone grow, you want them to be able to ask the right questions and think in the right way. I can gauge the maturity of a consultant and usually based on the questions they're asking in a meeting. And so if I'm mentoring someone, I want to instead of giving them the answer, I want to point them to where they're going to grow best so that they can ask better questions and grow from there. If I just feed them all the answers, I'm not really mentoring them. I'm just solving their problems for them.
Yeah, man, that is so good. That is so good. There's so much I'd want to add to that, but this podcast is about you, so we'll carry on because we're short on time as well. So you've discussed your greatest mentors. Now, what was the name of that chap you mentioned? Aaron
Duke.
So when you're saying he had a very formal way of mentoring, can you tell me a bit about that, the formality around that?
Yes. So in our mentoring, we meet for a couple hours at a time, and he always has goals for me. He has outcomes. He has where he wants me to be in 6 weeks. Actually, at one point, his goal for me, and he didn't tell me this till later, was to get me to quit my job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He had benchmarks, and he knows if it's working and where to pivot, and is very involved in kind of rerouting me if I'm getting it wrong, versus a less formal mentorship might just be someone I call when I'm stuck. So he is looking at all times, who do you need to be 6 months from now and how am I going to steer you in that direction? A more passive mentor is going to take your call when you call them, but they're not thinking about it going, gosh, where does Britta need to be 3 months from now?
Exactly. Yeah, so good. I love it. Is there an opportunity to learn from your mentoring experience, basically, in promoting this to a wider community? Scale, enable more people to take that leap into Dynamics. Do you see other companies running these type of mentoring programs, or is there a gap once again in the market? And I'm not talking about what we've just discussed with the program you're running, which I see as more of an enabling, career change. This type of mentoring, whether it be you're already in a role and you need mentoring, who's doing it well out in the market? Is there need for more? What's the story?
That's really good. So as far as scaling, I think there's an incredible opportunity to scale, and we need to bring a lot more help in to make it possible to scale. There are some people doing great work. There's a woman named Anna who I hope will become an MVP here very soon, who's running a similar program over in the UK, spending a lot of time with her students. And that, I think there's a better opportunity to divide and conquer. Having a lot more people spending 10 hours a week teaching a class for free, that is not going to grow by the leaps and bounds we need. I think it'd be better to share resources as much as possible and develop this is what a module 1 should look like. Here's what they need. And it takes someone who's really good at security. Every one of my students should hear Gus Gonzalez teach them about how to do security the simplest way possible. So we should really focus and say, okay, let's have somebody we have people passionate on every topic. Let's work with them and get big groups of people to benefit from this knowledge instead of having individual silos. I don't think individual mentors burning themselves out is the future of it. I think we need to focus together. I think also there's a great opportunity for us to come together as a partner community, because my role is not just taking someone and getting them enough skills to get entry level hired. I've found that the partners my people have gone to have not had the resources to continue to train them. And so my students stay with me for years. Sometimes I have one that's still with me 4 years later, and they keep growing and keep growing. And so I think the mindset needs to change on that. We have a responsibility just for our own survival to cultivate talent and continue to cultivate talent. And that we're going to have to come together as a community to do that. Otherwise, as we've already talked about, the poaching just becomes too big of an issue, and there's just a lot of other liabilities there.
Yeah, so true. Before we get on to some quick fire questions, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think we've covered it.
I'm sure you've got more to add, but let's go to let's go to quick fire. So, different than what we've already discussed, what books do you recommend most to people, and why? And these don't need to be necessarily in the Dynamics community. This could be more broader.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. So we've already talked about Getting Naked, which is the first book I recommend. I absolutely loved Small Data by Martin Lindstrom last year. That's a really, really good book. Right now, I just finished Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. That's a really, really good book. Very good leadership book. So if you're leading a team at all, I think that one is a must read. And then it's not technical at all, but I'm really enjoying 12 Rules for Life by Jordan B. Peterson right now. Heavy book, it's more about shaping your life and being a good person. It doesn't have to do with leadership necessarily or anything technical, but very, very good book. I recommend getting the audiobook of it though, because it's heavy. And so it's easier to get through it if you listen to it than read it.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. I do like audiobooks. What's your favorite app and why? And when I say your favorite, if I got you to go to what's consuming the most battery time on your phone right now, which app do you think will be at the top of that list?
So I am a waste of a smartphone.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I'm a terrible millennial. I am. I like Pinterest and Solitaire. But other than that, I don't really use my smartphone for things that you'd expect someone of my demographic to use it for. But apps on my computer that I cannot live without, Freebusy is what I use for scheduling.
Wow. Okay.
And what I love about that is it brings together, as a gun for hire, I'm a fake employee at a lot of places. And so I have a lot of calendars. And so it pulls together, I think I have probably 7 calendars that it aggregates. So someone can schedule time and they can tell. And I don't have to put a dentist appointment on 7 calendars so it doesn't get taken,
Okay, so this is, man, because this is one of my challenges as well. I have multiple schedules. So you're telling me that if you put the dentist appointment at 9 a.m. on Monday morning, you don't have to run any risk of anyone on any of the other 6 schedules booking that time out.
Exactly. So You have to train people. So they go through the Freebusy app and it offers them what's available. And what's really cool if you're running a team is there's a premium version where actually you could say, I need a meeting with these 3 people, and it will go look at all of their aggregated availability and come back with recommending a time.
Wow. Does it work with Office 365?
Yes.
Wow. Excellent.
So I love it. So Freebusy is
what else?
Worth every penny. Grammarly, I love.
Oh man, I love it as well.
As I mentioned before, I'm dyslexic, so writing emails, it just really helps a lot. And Boomerang, actually, I still just have a soft spot in my heart for Boomerang. So I don't use Boomerang for scheduling anymore because I like Freebusy better. But the ability to schedule emails or have it remind you sometimes.
So what is Boomerang? I've never heard of it.
So Boomerang is actually, maybe now they have a premium model for it, but you install it right into Outlook, and there's some great features. One is the ability to schedule emails. So for example, you want to send an email out to your team 3 days before a go live to remind them of something. Or maybe you're going to write a lot of replies on the weekend, but you don't want them to go out till Monday. So the ability to postpone something. There's also a great feature in there where, let's say you're CC'd on an email and someone on your team should take this. You're just copied because you're in leadership. You can set something. So if no one replies within 4 hours, it'll remind you, hey, someone really needs to reply to the client on this one, but it gives you the ability to let someone else come back. You can also have it bring an email back to you at a certain point, remind you about this later. It's just really, really great. Great little app. I love it.
Excellent. Take it was created by an Australian company, was it?
Hopefully. It makes sense with the name.
It does. Well, that's, man, I've got some good takeaways from there. With regards to Grammarly, it's absolutely been a lifesaver in my last, year or so. One of the things that I'm known for by all the people that I've worked with is that I can't spell to save myself, and I am dyslexic as well. So Grammarly has been a massive savior to me. It's even teaching me grammar a little better. So, it's very, very good. I'm hoping that Microsoft are going to acquire it because I think it would just make a massive, compliment to the Office suite.
Oh, I would love that.
Do you have any daily rituals that kind of set you on the path for a successful day?
Yes. I have made a point to be really mindful of my coffee time. It used to be that I would just drink cups and cups and cups and cups of coffee a day because I'd just be mindlessly drinking coffee while I was working. And I've decided to take that time out. And I work from home, so I've got a comfy chair in a sunny room. And if I'm going to drink coffee, I sit and I pause and I let that be an interruption. And I sit and I really enjoy the coffee and I think strategically about what I need to do and what the issues are, or even if I'm kind of bent out of shape about something, why I'm angry, why I'm irked, what it is that I've got wrong there. And so sometimes that turns into, at the end of it, that's a call to someone, a mentor or a friend saying, okay, I've got this wrong. What do I need to do here? Or it's just a refocusing time. I think, especially when you work from home and you don't have interruptions, you can just go heads down way too long and not come up for air. And so I've made a new rule that I don't drink coffee with my laptop open anymore. And that's really helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Brilliant. Good mindfulness. What recommendation do you have for people wanting a career in Dynamics? And this question is not like our others in that I'm talking about people that are, let's say they're in their career. They might have done quite well. They might be, 10 years, 15 years in, and they're thinking, if I was to get into this, what do I need to do right to be a really, really successful in this space?
I think learn how to teach, because you don't know and you don't understand anything you can't teach to somebody else. And so that's even something I make my mentees do really, really early, is be willing to share what you do know. And so blogging is a natural path for a lot of people, writing things out that way. I think there's a lot of options for video and other things. Get really involved in a community and be willing to be vulnerable and share what you do know. I think people wait way too long to get involved, and you learn so much more that way. I used to actually sign up to teach things I didn't know, so I'd make myself learn.
Yeah, yep, so true.
And so that can really be really valuable, because sometimes you just don't get exposed to all the skill sets you need on a project. You may lean really, really heavy into queues and case management and everything in that side of a project, and totally miss out on all the other great tools on another side of the project you haven't seen in a while. And so writing and learning and teaching and all those things can keep you more well-rounded. And it's, givers gain. So getting really involved in the community at whatever level, even if you're sure there's nothing you can offer, I promise there's someone who knows less than you who will benefit from what it is, even if it's just being vulnerable, what you did wrong and what you would never do again on your next implementation.
So true. Okay, so that brings me to the second to last one, which is vulnerability around, is there anything that you would do differently in the time you've been in Dynamics? If you could do a redo.
I wish I had learned to admit what I didn't know a lot earlier. I was so self-protective in that. I'd have a list of questions, things I couldn't solve for myself, and I would wait until conference time. And I would bring my list, and it was this ritual, and I'd show up to a conference with questions I'd had for more than 6 months. And in seconds, somebody, at a medic booth or in line to the bathroom or whatever would have solved all of my problems. And if I had just had the guts to put those questions out on a forum, if I had been less afraid to look stupid, it would have been a lot better. And so that's the thing that I found. You can actually, it's another mark of how experienced someone is. I think an MVP is probably one of the fastest person to say, I have no idea. Like they'll admit that really fast. And that's counterintuitive. You want to show how smart you are and you don't want to look stupid. And I wish I would have gotten rid of that fear a lot earlier.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Anyone you can recommend for a guest on this podcast in the future? That's kind of around the topics I've been talking about. Yeah. Anyone?
Yeah. I think you'd really like talking to Tabitha Sheaver. She comes from the project management side of things. Do you know her?
Julie Yak just mentioned her to me the other day.
Oh, funny. Okay. Yeah, she's fantastic. So she's had a lot of experience both on the executive sponsor side of projects, and then also has run a couple CRM or Dynamics practices, and is just a really, really sharp mind for change management. And so she has some really unique perspectives on getting people to learn and adapt and change and leading through change. And I think you'd really like talking to her.
Excellent. Can you do an introduction after this to her?
I'd be happy to.
That'd be great. So, Britta, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I'm quite excited about the things we've discussed, and I'm sure a lot is going to come out of it. Before you go, if people want to find you or connect with you online, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter. My handle is MacGyver CRM. And then that's the same thing for my website, MacGyverCRM.com, or email me at Britta@MacGyverCRM.
This has been the Dynamics 365 show, focusing on the ingredients of a successful Dynamics 365 practice. Your host was Business Solution MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. For more information on this episode, show notes, feedback and resources mentioned, or if you know someone who will be a great guest for future episodes, please go to nz365guy.com/22. If you want to hear more great podcasts, please subscribe to NZ365 Guy on your favorite podcast app.